Hey everybody, it is Thursday. It is 9 o'clock on the East Coast, and it is time to do our Tamco Tech Thursday Live. Today, the two products that will be on the agenda, well actually it'll be three, but two of them will be being tested in a way for you guys to be able to see just applications, how it works, how easy it is to apply, things like that. But it's going to be the tank sealer that we have. It's going to be the Monocoat, which is our 1K frame paint, anything that's going to go over a rusty surface. That's what the Monocoat's for. Then we're also going to discuss the high build epoxy primer that we have and explaining some of the purposes of that, what it's good for, things like that. And then basically doing a demonstration to show you guys the Monocoat in action. We're not going to show the tank sealer. We talked about maybe doing the tank coat with one of the tanks we have, but I don't want to do that. So what we'll do here, let me flip it around. Hold on a second. So we found this like really bad rusted can. Thought it looked pretty bad, right? That this would be good to use to put this coating on. So there's different ways that you can do it when you're applying the Monocoat. You can apply the Monocoat by brushing it. You can apply it by rolling it. You can apply it by spraying it. And we'll go over the details of the three different ways that you can apply it. But those are all the different ways you can do it depending on what it is that you're working on. You guys had recently seen a live where Sam was doing a frame. Well, I can't remember what he was doing. He was doing some kind of a car part. And he brushed the entire car part with the Monocoat and basically did it in one coat. So one of the cool things about the name Monocoat is kind of two different, like it's kind of like two plays in one. It's a Monocoat because there takes no other action of just doing one thing. You just literally shake it up and it's good to go. So it's like a 1K one-step product. Also Monocoat meaning one, it only needs one coat. So you don't have to do just one coat. You could do two coats. It works based on mill build, but one coat is sufficient with this product. I'm going to explain why this is a better product than Pour 15. Not just because we say it's better than Pour 15, but because chemically why it's completely different than Pour 15. It comes down to resin technology and it comes down to mill build. And you'll, by the time we're done here, understand the difference between those two things and what separates it and differentiates it between Pour 15, chassis saver, or anything like it. This is a true Pour 15 killer, a true chassis saver killer. It's a completely different technology. Well, I shouldn't say different technology. Same idea and technology, different resin. Different resins make or break your products. This one right here is the tank coat. We have the tank here just for purposes of showing you guys that was done by SICK for our very first SEMA. So that's sitting there. This here is the tank coat. We'll explain some, quick procedures. I'll have Sean go over some of that as well, the procedures for the tank coat, best ways of doing it. If you guys are used to doing relining of motorcycle tanks, then you're going to understand how to use this. You're going to use it in the same kind of application that you've ever used any of the other tank coats on the market or fuel tank sealers on the market. Works the same way. I'll explain some of the good purposes about it. So it's not like this is a game changer. There's not really like a game changer to this tank coat, but it's a good option for you guys to use this versus using somebody else's that's on the market. It's priced well, it works well, it does the job, it takes care of the tank if it's rusted or anything like that. It's a vinyl-based product and it does its job. So that's basically, part of the reasons to use it. So did you find a stick, by the way? Mm-hmm. Awesome, so we found a stick. Okay, so let me go over really quick some of the, I see SICK just joined. There's your tank there, SICK, that you did first SEMA. So let me go over some of the basic information on epoxy first. I think it'd be easier just to kind of go over epoxy first. Get that out of the way because there's not going to be any kind of a demonstration on epoxy. So just kind of talk about that and get that out of the way. So anyways, and just so you guys know, these are not things that I have sold every single day. I've been kind of nervous about the live because usually I do lives on things that I know extremely well, have done forever, and it's second nature, and it just, it's easy to do. So today, it's been a little bit different because these are newer products for us. I know about them, but I'm not like fluid in them. So excuse me if I'm not normally how I would be, if it doesn't flow as well, if I have to look at notes, things like that, because again, there are three different products that I have not sold forever, like everything else. So the difference between the new epoxy that we have, which is the high build epoxy, versus our DTA epoxy is two things. One is time frame, two is the build. Our DTA epoxy, which is our direct to anything epoxy, is our epoxy that sticks literally to any surface. And it is a slower epoxy. It has no true induction time on it. You can go over top of it in about 12 hours with anything. You have a 7-day window to go over top of it without having to do any kind of sanding to it. Okay, so the difference with the 700 series is it comes in white, black, or gray. It's a 1-to-1 mix ratio, but it's very thick. So it has the build that you might be used to with, like, say, a 5310. You will need to reduce it. Typically, most people have to, unless you're using a large tip enough size to be able to, go through a 2.0 without having to reduce it. Typically, you're going to have to reduce it. You can use our urethane grade reducer that we sell at Tamco or another urethane grade reducer that you already have to be able to do that reduction as needed. So there's not like a set amount to reduce it on the new epoxy. Reduce as needed. You may have a big enough tip size that you don't have to worry about reduction. If you're using like a polyprime gun where it's like a 2.2, 2.5, most likely you will not need to reduce it at all. What are some of the key features? Key features would be that you do not have to wait that long to sand it. If it's sitting above 75 degrees, you're going to be able to start sanding it in about 4 hours. Anywhere between the 4-hour time frame and on, you'd be able to start sanding it. You would not be able to do that with our epoxy that we have now, the DTA. It's extremely slow. You're not doing anything sandability-wise for days before you can even do that. That's a nice feature about the DTA is that you don't have to do that. You actually can function and go over top of it for 7 days without having to sand it. The difference between this would be, and we're not saying to get rid of the DTA. We're not saying don't use it. We're not saying don't use 5310. But there are guys who want to eliminate one of the two steps. They want to do epoxy, but they want the build. But they don't want to have to necessarily buy 2 different products. This one product can get the job done all together and be fast, but the properties of its adhesion are not going to be as good as the DTA. The DTA is the single most amazing product that we create that actually just sticks to everything. It has no adhesion properties at all. When it locks down, it locks down. The new epoxy is not going to be as good over stainless, and it's not going to be as good over aluminum. That's just not in the resin technology. It comes down to resin technology and qualities and performance. And in this particular resin technology, it's not there to stick well to an aluminum or to a stainless steel. Anything else, it's going to work very well and adhere very well to. You're going to be able to sand it, like I said, in 4 hours. It's going to give you the kind of build that would rival that of 5310. Do it all in an epoxy, being a water-based epoxy, meaning it can sit outside. It can have any of those things done to it. It needs an induction time. That is going to be the key difference between the DTA and the new epoxy. You have to induce this primer. Like most epoxies on the market, they need to be induced. This particular one needs to sit for 30 to 45 minutes before you even begin to use it. If you don't, it's going to be very slow and it's not going to perform the way that you want it to. So this needs to be done where it's you're like getting ready to spray. You need to do a couple different things. Take that into consideration before you do this and have it be sitting there mixed 1-to-1. If you're reducing it, that's fine. And then move forward. Let it sit there, let it do its thing, let it induce while you're doing whatever, and then move on. Okay, so let me kind of go over, again, I'm looking at my tech sheet that we haven't released yet, but I was reading it. So the pot life on it, for you guys to know, is like a 12 to 18 hour pot life. That's actually a long pot life for an epoxy. For being an epoxy that you can get on as quick as you can get on it for sanding wise, it actually does have kind of a longer pot life. So 12 to 18 hours is a long time. Dry time's at least 4 hours at above 75 degrees. It comes in gray, black, and white. Definitely have to do the 1-to-1 mix ratio on it with the catalyst. Definitely have to let it induce. What else? Okay, so let's go over some of the things that it would be really good to go over top of. And Sean's having a really hard time getting the Monocoat can open. And I'm saying this because someone else already complained to us that they tried to open the can and they literally had to destroy the can to get it open. So that's something that we need to take a look at. Okay, so let me go over some of the procedures for cleaning it here. You should clean the surface with 397 wax and grease remover, which is our really aggressive wax and grease remover. You're going to want to use that to get the surface as clean as possible to move forward before you do anything to have the best adhesion. You can sandblast the metal, you can sand the metal. All of this, the actual prep is going to be no different than using 5310 or our epoxy or anybody else's primer or epoxy for that reason. It's no different. So the prep is going to be the same. Just the things you need to take into consideration are the facts that it can be sanded in 4 hours. It stinks bad. Be sanded in 4 hours, and it builds really, really high. You can actually stack it as much as you need to, upwards of 15 mils. So a lot of different products, you might be worried if you stack it too much, it would be prone to cracking. For instance, if you were used to using poly, like I always tell people not to do, but if you were used to using poly for that build, you would have a level to which if you stacked it too much, it would be prone to cracking. It would be prone to having the stress cracks that poly is known for. It's a brittle product. It doesn't have that flexibility in it. And when you stack it too much, that's what it's prone to. This epoxy, for instance, is able to be stacked upwards of 15 mils and never have an issue with having any kind of cracking issues. So that in itself makes it a really, really good key feature about using this epoxy over using maybe some other ones on the market. When you're using our standard DTA epoxy, you're never going to get a mill build to it. It does very, very minimal. It's basically meant for using an epoxy that's going to give you the absolute best adhesion possible to any surface that you could possibly have. But you still have to wait the 12 hours. If you want to start using something that eliminates your time frame for top coating, allows you to go wet on wet, by the way. So you want to wait 4 hours for sanding. But if you want to go wet on wet, the problem with most epoxies have always been that if you go wet on wet, you cause dieback. It's a key problem with epoxies. It's something that happens when you do the wet on wet thing. As it's curing, it kills the gloss and it causes dieback from the top. Basically, it draws it into itself and it will give you long-term dieback issues. A lot of people don't realize that when you use epoxies and you use them as sealers, that is a cause that tends to happen. They're not meant to be accelerated. When you accelerate them, that is one of the actual problems that occurs. This particular product, the way that it's designed, the way that it's made, it can be used as a sealer and it can be made to be used within a flash time to be used wet on wet. So if you wanted to have an epoxy that you can go wet on wet with for whatever reason, you can do that with this new epoxy here. Whereas you cannot do it with the DTA epoxy. It's never meant to be used wet on wet. It's never meant to be used sooner than 12 hours. I have some guys that can go sooner, but it's not ideal. Okay, so I think that basically covers it for the actual epoxy. I have been watching comments and questions. I haven't seen a whole lot. Let me kind of just scroll back through here for a second. What is the thermocycle about? Hot to cold, think about a bathtub. You can do, it doesn't have a temperature in which it would go too low. It can go in any temperature basically. Paint should never go higher. Any kind of a 2K paint should never go higher than 400. 350 being ideal, no higher than 400. So if you're staying within that temperature, you're perfectly fine, no issues. It's not going to freeze below a certain temperature or anything like that. Let's see. My project is slow and it will be a long time before I top coat. How hard will it be to sand after it sits a month or so? So it's a high build primer. It's going to sand pretty decent. That's one of the key features of it, how it's made. 5310, for instance, if it sits there for 6 months, it still sands just as good. It doesn't get to a point where it loses its sandability. This one will not get to where you cannot sand it. Now, will it sand a little bit harder than it would maybe the first week? Yes, that's just the nature of paint. That's the nature of when things cure. When something cures, which within that time frame, it's going to get to a stage in which it's cured, you're going to be able to sand it, but you are going to put a bit more elbow grease into it. That would be the same with anybody's product that sits that long. Let's see. Okay, I don't see any other questions. Let me flip it around. We're going to go to the Monocoat. Okay, so Sean, as you can see, destroyed the lid. This is the problem. We're going to have to fix this. How many other guys have had this issue where you literally had to chisel the lid off? I mean, this is the problem, though. Let me explain why this is the problem. You guys are seeing this live. So this is a product here. Let me explain to you what Monocoat is. Let me explain what happens. So this is a urethane. A lot of people would say 1K. Well, 1K is not a urethane. 1K means it doesn't take a hardener. That's not true when it comes down to this kind of moisture cure technology. Moisture cure technology basically is built where the hardener is already placed inside the product at the time that it's made. So what happens is the second you open the lid and you're inside, so granted we're not outside and it's been raining all day, but the second you open the lid, something happens. And what happens is the moisture from the air, depending on the climate that you live in, goes inside this product. When it goes inside there, it instantly creates a catalyzation that happens. The moisture from the air finds the moisture scavenger that's inside of this product and it activates it and it causes it to basically catalyze. So there is catalyst already in it. It's not technically a 1K in the sense of it never has a catalyst in it. It does, but you're not putting it in there. We do it for you. That's how the technology is made. So yes, it is a urethane. Yes, it is resistant to UV naturally. There is no UV in it. This is a question you guys have been asking, and I didn't really want to answer a whole lot of questions on the product until I was more comfortable and basically learned more of what the technology and the monocoat technology was. So it is something that you can put on anything. You could put it literally on any kind of a surface, whether it be an automotive surface, whether it be a marine surface or a motorcycle or a frame or farm equipment. Literally anything that you want to be able to go over top of, you could go over top of this. It would be ideal for doing frames. It would be ideal for doing anything that's rusted that you need to prevent the rust from occurring. Now, this product is going to be different than Pore 15 for a couple different reasons, and let's explain that. Pore 15 is a thin product. If you guys have ever used it, then you'll know that Pore 15 has a window in which it is or not a window, but it's a product that's on the thinner side, meaning when you go to look at the viscosity of it, it's thin. Now, as Sean shook that, I don't know if you can kind of tell, this is not thin. It has, have you stirred it yet? And so you have to stir it, by the way, when you get it, because when you stir or shake it, whenever this was made, there was hardener in there. So it needs to be basically stirred together. You need to activate it is the best way to explain it. The moisture in the air is activating it. You stirring it is help activating it because you need it all to go together. So it's important that before you use this product, you shake it or you stir it to make sure that all of the ingredients come together to allow the catalyzation with the air and the humidity and the moisture in the air to happen. So once you do that, you now have a product. Now the problem is, and the problem with this lid being like it is that now that that's happened, now that this is open, this is going to go bad. There is a shelf life to this. Once it's already in its catalyzed stage, you can close the lid back up and you can move forward and it's not gonna be like, okay, I can't use it the next day. You will, but just realize that it starts to go bad quickly. That's just the nature of it. There's nothing you can do to save it. It is what it is. That's why it's only sold in quarts, because that way you don't have waste. So any of you guys who've been buying Pore 15 and you buy it in gallons and you only get about a quart out of it, then 3/4 of the gallon goes bad. That is the reason. It's why we will never sell it in a gallon and only in quarts. It's just a better idea. You can buy 4 quarts if you need to do a project and you will never have to worry about having waste. There's no real point in that. Okay, so what we want to show is taking the product here. We got a brush. We're going to have Sean brush it on here.
This old rusty cotton. I think it's an old coffee can.
So a quart's going to do about 90 square feet. So just so you guys know, if you're trying to figure out how far it's going to go, it's going to do 90 square feet. When you're doing this, you want to make sure that you have this as thick as possible. So like when you saw Sam doing the video recently when he was doing it, and you saw how he did it, he put it on pretty thick. You want to make sure that you're putting it on thick. The mill build is what's going to kill this rust. Now, we're going to keep this can around. Now that we've done this, I'm going to make sure to keep the can around just to test this myself and watch it. At the bottom, you're going to see the rust was worse. So that's something that we're going to want to keep an eye on because the rust was much worse. Also take into consideration, nothing's been done to this can. This was not cleaned. This was not sanded. Nothing was done to this can. What you see is what you get. We're just doing this for tests for you guys to see, so we didn't care about that. And also, if you can have the worst real-world environment for something, it's kind of like a good test as well. So don't brush the whole thing because we want to roll part of it to show it to you. So we're going to brush this here. We may go back over top of it one more time because the rust is pretty bad. And again, this product works based off mill build. If you don't have enough mill build, you're not going to thoroughly encapsulate and kill the rust. It needs that mill build.
It's going on pretty thick.
You can tell it's on thick. You can tell by looking at it with the brush it's on thick. Now make sure that, guys, when you're using a brush to do it, if you choose to use a brush, that you use a brush that's not going to melt when you put this product inside of it. So find a brush that can take any kind of an oil-based paint, or a brush that specifically states that it can take any kind of paint. Same with the roller. The roller that I got when I went to the hardware store, also make sure that you get one that specifically states that it can use any paint, not shed, not melt, not any of those things when you go to use it. That would be, you know, a key thing. So while he's getting something. So there's different ways you can apply this. You can brush it, you can roll it, you can spray it. If you want to spray it, you can use a 1-3, 1-4 kind of a gun. It'll work perfectly doing that. You'll have no issues doing that. So if you want to spray it feel free to get a Harbor Freight gun. You know, don't get something that, you know, you really care about. Get a Harbor Freight gun and then use that for spraying that. You can spray it for upwards of a couple hours. So if it's, you know, you've done one coat and you want to come back over top of it, within a few hours, you're going to be able to go back over top of it and you won't have any kind of an issues with doing that. If you want to be able to re-top coat it, you need to let it sit for a couple days, let it do its thing. Then you could sand it and you could go back over top of it. So I would give it a good, you know, 2 days before you did anything. Sand it, 320 or so, and then you'll be able to get your adhesion to go move forward. You could spray it, you could brush it, you could roll it, whatever you want to do. Here's a really cool feature that you guys are going to want to know. I was kind of surprised and kind of amazed when I learned this. This is a product that will work in literally 0 temperature. Meaning it could be 0 degrees outside and this product will work. It will, because of the way that the technology is, yes, the catalyst is already in there, but it actually is able to function in 0 degree weather and do its thing, which is kind of amazing to me. I was kind of, you know, impressed that it could actually do that in 0 degree weather. So if you guys are worried about the temperatures that you're doing this, if it's 30 degrees outside or 40 degrees outside or 50 or whatever it may be, this can actually handle it. It can actually function and do everything it needs to do in those temperatures, which is a pretty cool feature, I thought. So just if you guys were wondering that, you'd be able to do that. If you want to reduce it, you use the 13 series reducer, whichever temperature you want to use, and you can be able to do it. The product, if you guys are wondering, just like viscosity-wise, what the solids content is, it's in the high 60s for the solids content of it. Let's see. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that you need to do. One coat is going to work well, but make sure they're heavy coats. If you're not quite sure if one coat's enough, go back over top of it and do a second coat. Does it stick to bare metal? Yes. It's for 100% bare metal. It will stick to any kind of surface. 100% stick to bare metal, any kind of surface. That's what it's meant for. And it will stick direct to rust. That's the key feature. So now we're breaking out the roller and rolling it on. As you can tell by watching it go on, it rolls on pretty easy. So depending on what you do is going to depend on the look. As you can see, the rolling looks different than the brushing.
Brushing's probably going to be a little bit thicker. I mean, you
can tell the brushing is thicker. Like when you're looking at it here, just like that section right there, you can already, no, put it back.
Yeah.
Like right there, you can tell it's thicker here than it is over here.
Because the roller absorbs more paint than the brush does. I mean, you could roll it thick.
And you could always do 2 coats. There's not like a certain specific amount that you can't do. If you want to do more than 1 coat, you can do more than 1 coat. And just so you guys know, this stuff smells horrible. We're on paint all day and doesn't smell like this.
That's not that bad.
So he's going to coat the whole thing here.
I'm leaving the rust.
So you're going to leave part of it?
Yeah.
Okay. Will it stick to acid dipped parts? You know, I don't know that. I would say if it's properly prepared, that shouldn't be an issue. If it's, you know, something that you can have anything else stick to, then the acid part shouldn't be that big of an issue. Should we do the inside of the can?
No.
I'm joking. Better to clean the heavy rust. Yes. So basically, if you can prep it first, you should prep it first. You should be able to use like a wire brush and break off any of the scaled rust that you may have. It's always a good idea to get rid of that. Any kind of rust that you can do, you should get rid of. Time between coats is going to be about 10 to 15 minutes. It's pretty fast, but yes, 10 to 15 minutes would be a good time frame between coats. You can use anything you need to reduce it wise. When it comes to our reducers, that's what I would definitely recommend. It doesn't matter on the temperature. Mask required, I would wear a mask. This has hardener built into it. It has an isocyanate hardener built into it. It has a strong smell. So yes, I'm doing this in my kitchen and I couldn't talk if I was wearing a mask, so I'm not. But you should. You guys should definitely wear a mask when you're doing it. If you clean the acid dip parts with baking soda, you should be fine. Now, make sure that when you're using baking soda, that you completely neutralize that before you do anything.
Yeah.
Definitely needs to be neutralized.
Soda,
and someone just said, is there an isocyanate risk? Yes, there's isocyanate built into it.
Vinegar.
But remember that when you're not spraying, just so you guys understand something, when you're not spraying hardener, something that has hardener in it, when you're brushing it and when you're rolling it, it's not going the same into your lungs as it was as if you were completely breaking it up and having it be in particles in the air that you're breathing. It acts differently whenever it's brushed or rolled than it does when it's sprayed. Now, is it good for you to breathe in just like right now? No, it's not good for us. But it's not the same when you're not spraying it. This converts rust, 100% converts rust. That is the point of it. That's why this can looks so bad and it looks so rusted and everything else. And we're gonna leave this here so that we're gonna be able to test it to see what was done. This one right here is where it was brushed. This one right here is where it was rolled, and we're gonna leave the center strip right there with nothing. It's $49.95 a quart. So $49.95 a quart. And you can see Sean was, you know, sagging his brush marks right there. Poor job, poor job, Sean. I'm just harassing you, it's fine.
No.
Anyways, so other than temperature, what's the advantage of this versus DTA? DTA cannot convert rust solely. DTA should never be used to convert rust. Does the DTA epoxy have rust ability, being able to convert rust to a certain degree? Very small amount. Because again, these products work based off mill build. The epoxy is a low build product. That one epoxy, the DTA epoxy, is like a sealing epoxy. It works like a sealer. It doesn't work as a high build. Now, if you were using the new one that I covered in the very beginning of the video, that one is a high build one. That one actually can convert rust as well. But this right here, I wouldn't recommend you just use this like on the entire body of a vehicle that you're trying to, you know, get rid of rust. That's not what this is for. This is meant for frames, for chassis, for, you know, different things that you're trying to use that you want to convert rust. Should you go over top of how bad this can was? No, you shouldn't. You should prep it. You should clean it. You should remove as much scaled rust as you can. You should get it prepped properly. Again, we're doing this for a video so you guys can see it. Can you prime over top of it? Absolutely. You can paint over top of this. You can prime over top of this. You can do whatever you want over top of it. Let it sit. You can go over top of it within flash time if you want to, or you can wait, you can sand it, and then you can do it. So can you spray pearl over top of it? If you wanted to. I mean, I don't really know what the point of that would be, but if you wanted to spray something over top of it, you could. But I mean, I don't really find that this is a base for paint. It's not. I mean, look at it. It doesn't look that great. Now, granted, the surface wasn't that great, but if you're using this to convert rust, you're not wanting to use it as your main base for going over top of for color until you prep it and prime it and sand it and things like that, or I would never use this as a base to go over top of. And then someone says, you can prime right over top of it. Yes, you can paint, you can prime, you can do whatever you want right over top of it after you've prepped it. I wouldn't do it again like it is here. I would sand it, I would prep it properly and move forward, no different than a primer in that aspect. But this will be able to go, for instance, outside and not chalk right away. Eventually, in 10 or so years, is it going to chalk? Yes, that's what's going to happen, but it's not still going to fail. It still has an extremely long life built into it. That's the actual key characteristics of it. It's something that can sit outside, have sun on it, and not die out. Again, does it have UV added to it? No. But you know what? High impact resin and 9500 resin, unless we add UV to it, which we do, the max amount, the resin technology inherently is UV resistant without us adding a drop. It's the same thing with this. It's inherently UV resistant built into it. We're not putting UV into it because there's no point. It's in the system. It's UV resistant for that reason. So I think that basically covers, it's already 9:30, we've been doing this. I think that basically covers the actual monocoat. I don't know if there's many more things I can actually talk about on it. Make sure that you clean the surfaces really well with like a 397. Our wax and grease remover would be a really good thing to use to clean the surface with. If you want to clean up, it's going to clean up with lacquer thinner or any kind of acetone if you want to clean up with it. Again, make sure that when you're done, you seal it well. This is sealed as well as it can be for right now. But just make sure it's sealed well. When you seal it well, put it somewhere where it's not high moisture or any kind of high humidity to help keep the shelf life even longer. Okay. I think that takes care of monocoat. I think that basically covers everything that I want to talk about with the monocoat on what you can do with it, how you can do it. Key feature of it, like people always talk about like salt spray testing. It goes well over 1,000 hours of salt spray testing. So that's a key feature right there of what it does. Okay, so I think we basically it's tack-free, by the way, in about 2 hours. So if you guys are wanting to know when it's completely tack-free, about 2 hours it's completely tack-free, just so you guys know. Okay, so the last thing I want to go over other than that, because that's basically it for the monocoat, and hopefully it's helpful. Hope you guys are learning some things on it. we've been having it on the website, and there hasn't been enough tech on it. So I'm happy that we're doing this today to kind of get some more tech on it. Shelf life, once it's opened, really and truly depends on your climate in which you opened it and how well you sealed it. It could last anywhere for a year to a couple weeks. It really just depends on your climate. Realize that it is a moisture cure product. The humidity and the climate that you live in is going to decide whether or not it's going to last longer. This is going to last longer in Arizona than it's going to last in Florida. If you're living in South Florida, your Monocoat's going to go bad pretty fast. If you're living in Arizona or California where the humidity is pretty mild and pretty dry, your Monocoat's going to last a lot longer. Okay, tank coat. What do we want to discuss on tank coat, Sean? You did some research here. So if you guys have been doing, different motorcycle tanks where you've been using any kind of a tank sealer, then you already realize that there's things to use to put inside of a tank to be able to get it prepped to put a liner in it. Meaning there's cleaners to put in there, there's different agents you can put in there to basically strip it, get it ready, get the rust out as much as possible, get it in a completely dried state in order to be able to use this product. You're not going to be able to use this product, in whenever the tank is wet. Meaning it needs to have no gasoline in it, and it needs to have no water in it, it needs to have none of that. And then after that fact, after it's completely dry, and you can use an air hose and you can go inside of it and you can be blowing it to get it to dry out and be completely dry. Once it's completely dry, then you can come back and use the tank sealer. So the nice thing about this product is it's made out of vinyl. Vinyl means that nothing sticks to it, but it sticks to everything. So this particular product is going to stick extremely well to the inside of the tank, but it won't let anything stick to it. It's going to be impervious to gasoline, and it's going to be something that's going to be able to withstand any kind of a chemical or gasoline. The only two that it actually says that it does struggle with would be E85 and E10, I believe was the other one. Any of your regular gasolines that you're using are going to work perfectly fine on this, but E85 and E10 were the two that for most tank coats or most tank sealers, they have a little bit of an issue. Again, it's vinyl based. Vinyl sticks to everything. And that's one of the key features of it. I don't know if you guys can see. Let's see if you can look in here. You got a flashlight?
Your phone does.
I mean, I can't turn the flashlight on whenever I'm doing a live. That's the point of having a second person here. So stick it in there. I can tell, I think, that you can already see.
Nah, it's pretty rusty in there.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is, not now, not during this live, but we're going to do this. We're going to actually clean this out, get it ready as much as possible, and then put this tank coat inside of this tank that Sick did for our first SEMA, and we're going to test it and see what it does ourselves and monitor it. I have somebody else in Florida who's been doing it, and he did an entire tank with it, and he posted about it. He plans on taking his tank and cutting it in half and then showing what it's done. So we're going to definitely take this one and do some testings with it, with the tank coat, and just, see what it does, see how well it works. But if you guys are using any kind of other tank coats or any kind of sealing tank that you're putting on the inside, this right here, and I can open it and show you guys what it looks like. This right here is going to be the one to use.
That one shouldn't be hard to open. It should open. No problem.
Okay. I'm used to having to do things one-handed when I do lives and videos. Okay, so this is what it looks like. Just so you guys know, that's what the inside of it looks like. It's going to be a whitish color that goes on the inside. The viscosity on it is pretty good. So basically what you're going to do is you need to make sure that the tank is plugged up. You need to make sure that it's not going to leak by any other ways whenever you go to do this. The best way to explain it is you dump it in there and you just swirl it around and you cover the very top of this and you literally just move the tank every direction possible to make sure that this coating is going to seal every single spot on the inside of this tank. That's the idea. Then once that's done and you feel like you have 100% of the entire tank covered in this particular product right here, then you dump out the excess and then you're done. So you drain out the excess how you would normally drain like gasoline or whatever. You would drain it out of there and then you're done. And then it sits, and it needs to sit for 2 days before you come back and you put any kind of gasoline in it. So if you guys are wanting to know, how long does it need to sit for after? It needs to sit for 2 days, and then you come back, and then you can put gasoline, and then you're good to go. And then the tank is sealed. So it's going to be the most cost-effective option that I can think of right now to be able to do that. This particular product is $39.95 for a quart. And it's more than enough, I would say, to do a tank. We had somebody else test it and he had leftover. So, you know, $39.95, you're going to be able to have what you need to be able to do it. How well does it stick to an aluminum tank? It sticks very well. So it'll stick to aluminum or anything. That's one of the key features of the vinyl product, is that it sticks to anything. So you're not going to have any kind of adhesion issues to do. Can you reuse the leftovers? I would not recommend reusing the leftovers, because if you think about it, the inside of that tank is full of rust. It's full of old contaminants, it's full of rust, and a lot of that rust is going to be flaky, and it's going to be just sitting in that tank. And a lot of people might wonder, you know, why do they rust so much? They rust because of the water and the gasoline. So the water and the gasoline causes the inside to eventually rust over time. So I would not use leftover, because that leftover is going to be contaminated by the things that are inside of that gas tank. I would drain it and move forward. I would never come back and use it again.
It will also work on fiberglass.
And it will also work on fiberglass, Sean said. So if you guys want to know, it'll work on that as well.
Fiberglass, aluminum, and steel.
So just one coat. When it comes down to tank coat, yes, you just, whatever you dump in there and you swirl around and you get to basically coat on the entire thing, that's all it takes. You don't have to come back again and dump in more and then redo it again. One use and you're done. Now, maybe straining it, yeah, that sounds like that would be a good idea. If you can strain it and maybe get any of the rust particles out, then you could reuse it again. It's not expensive. I mean, like I said, it's $39.95 for a quart, and it's going to do more than one tank. Depending on the size of your tank also is going to matter. This is a smaller one compared to some other ones, so this one's going to be able to not take as much to get the job done. But straining it, like Six said, is probably a good idea, and then you could, you know, reuse it again. It doesn't have a shelf life or anything like that. Seal it well, shake it, you're good to go. It's not something that's going to go bad. It doesn't have a hardener in it. It's a true 1K product, so you're not going to have any issues in that area. Any other questions that you guys have on it? You sold me on the Monocoat. I'll be ordering it right away. So all of these products, by the way, are on the website. You can find all of them on there. Yesterday, I added a flattening agent. So if you guys have been looking for the universal kind of flattening agents, I added the universal flattening agent to the actual website. You guys can use it in any kind of clear or single stage. It takes about 50% flattening agent to our clear coat in Tamco to even kill the gloss. So realize that when you're using it, it's going to use about that much. 8 ounces will coat any tank. There you go. See, Pat came to the rescue. He's the one that actually has been using it, is doing a test on it and things like that. So if you think about it, 8 ounces will do any tank. You can do multiple tanks for $39.95. That's a really good price. So that was good information. So thank you for sharing that.
12 will do, 16 ounces will do a 12-gallon tank.
Okay, well, that's cool. Okay, so hopefully this has been helpful for you guys, and you guys learned some different things about the products, and it helps you be able to use them into the future here. Again, all the products are on the website. You'll have no issues being able to, you know, get them tonight. If you want to get them tonight, we have all of them in stock. We've had them in stock, so there's no issues there. I think that basically answered all of the questions you guys have. I don't know if there's any other ones to actually answer, but I think we covered most of them. If we didn't cover it, or you still have a question, or you're still wondering, just ask. Ask in the group, and we'll answer the questions right away, and there's no issues doing that ever. So always, again, just ask, and we can get them answered. Pretty sure that covers everything. I don't want to keep it too long. It's already been about 40 minutes. So again, 3 products, all listed on the website. Any other questions you guys may have about them, just let us know. And we'll be not doing a tech next Thursday. I will not be. I'll be at a concert, so I won't be able to do it. But somebody else, I think Kevin, is going to do a live that I will share into the group, you know, to kind of fill that spot if you guys are wanting to learn some information about Tamco from somebody else. Again, thanks for tuning in for Tamco Tech Thursdays. Have a good night. Thanks for the support. Thanks, guys.